games consoles, the Sony PlayStation.
Even this looks quite like retro now, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Original controller. Of course, this, the PlayStation introducing characters for like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Lara Croft in Tomb Raider, of course. It was the first console to sell more than 100 million units. Before I break it, take a look.
Let's put it down.
Lots of retro images there. Let's talk to Ryan Pearson, a gaming enthusiast with a passion for all things retro. Morning.
Morning.
Nice to see you. It's so, for a start, I can't believe it's 30 years.
Yeah, I know. I'm coming up to 30 now, and I'm like, the fact that this stuff is being classed as retro. Yeah, because I own a retro arcade, and I do a lot of older stuff, so it's like, yeah, coming up to my generation of things is a bit scary.
Okay, so how game-changing, sorry, pardon the pun, how game-changing was this? How revolutionary when they introduced this?
So you got to think about the time that it was as well. So it's December of 1994. It's the height of the console wars. It is, Sega versus Nintendo. It's Mario versus Sonic, the way it's been for years. And then all of a sudden, Sony comes along with a new console. And it revolutionized it with incredible 3D capabilities, awesome audio, and the CD-based software, which at the time, no one else had really done properly there.
Because before you had to, put a cartridge in, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. Predominantly, it was still cartridge-based software. On the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo, they were still sticking with cartridge-based.
Tell us about console wars then. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, so particularly through the 90s. So Nintendo had been ruling for a long time, and it wasn't really till the Mega Drive came along that they had some kind of competition there, especially when Sega brought Sonic out in 1991. It really kind of kicked it up there of which console are you going to buy? And then say a couple of years later, out of a sore deal with Nintendo, Sony come out with the PlayStation.
And it was the start of a pretty significant shift in how we saw gaming, wasn't it? Because Sony had never been in this sort of game.
No, exactly. And they were a very reputable, hi-fi television, audio company. They've been making electronics for years at this point, but they hadn't touched into the video game industry. And I feel like that's one of the things that made it so successful is that they had no rules. They were a rogue company, Sega and Nintendo, they had ideas and ways that they've been doing it for well over a decade at that point. But Sony had a whole fresh eyes on the market, and that's what it really needed in the 90s.
So over the years, PlayStation has changed, hasn't it? It's developed,
Massively,
it's moved on. Which is the kind of the iconic PlayStation era?
I feel like the most iconic has to be the PlayStation 2. The library for it is absolutely incredible. I feel like it's one of those consoles that everyone remembers, and again, it was a huge step up. You don't really get that anymore, like from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5. It's a little bit different, but from the PlayStation 1 to the PlayStation 2, it was a huge jump in what you were getting.
It's incredible how it's introduced us to so many different characters as well. I mean, we saw Lara Croft there, almost a household name with movies and spin-offs and all sorts of stuff. And it's changed the conversation around, what role, because these aren't just games anymore, are they? Just games. There's so much more.
Exactly, yeah. They've become a part of, our culture now. It's, our parents have played these games. Our kids are playing these games. It seems like they're here to stay with it. And one of the great things with the PlayStation was when it came around, video games were still seen as a toy made by toy companies. So for Sony to come along, you're not a toy company, you're a high-end electronics company. So they provided it for that older generation as well there. So people in their early 20s and that, to be able to play video games and not be embarrassed about it. They could say to their friends, yeah, come round and let's play some Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation together.
Is it quite tribal? What the console that you use, is it quite, well, I'm a PlayStation person or an Xbox person? How are people divided?
Yes. It's always kind of very much been that way, especially when it comes down to like exclusive games and stuff and that set these companies apart. But that's feeling like one of the things where, again, at the time, Sega had Sonic and Nintendo had Mario. But when the PlayStation came along, they didn't have a mascot or anything in that. So they were just kind of getting games out there like Crash Bandicoot and stuff. And they also got a lot of third-party support, which is what no one that had done CD-based gaming before this had done properly. There'd been Atari Jaguar, Philips CDI, the Mega CD, which had all come out in the years before, but none of them had took off because they didn't have that support there.
And it's the way that it has changed the industry. You talk there about people taking this really seriously. We now talk about esports.
Yes,
and esports Olympics. This isn't just a hobby. This is serious big business.
Yeah, some people make big money off playing video games nowadays, and it is the biggest industry we have now. It's bigger than the music and film combined, and it's consoles like this that have really paved the way there for that to be possible today.
It's so fun to see it, actually, because it's ages since I've seen one of the original ones.
Yes,
so, Thank you for bringing it in. Really good to talk to you.
No problem. Thank you.
Piece of history. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely not touching it.
No, not again. No.
Thanks, Ryan.
Now, how would you feel if one of your holiday